On the day I was released from prison, Bradley didn't come. It was his secretary, Eden, who came to pick me up. As the victim whom I stabbed, she forgave me with great magnanimity and admonished me. After you're out, I hope Miss Angela will turn over a new leaf and be a good person. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. Eden whipped me twice with a branch, but she had a gentle smile on her face. Bradley specifically told me to bring a branch to get rid of the bad luck on you. She emphasized the words, bad luck, particularly forcefully, whether it was intentional or not. The branch swept across my chapped cheek, and it stung painfully. If it were the old Angela, I'm afraid I would have pounced on her ferociously. If I didn't tear off half of her skin, I wouldn't be called Angela. But now, I just kept my head down and smiled cautiously, saying, I'm sorry to trouble you. Being cautious and ingratiating, and avoiding conflicts with others, was the most important lesson I learned during my years in prison. On the way, I held my small bag and carefully huddled in a corner of the car. Eden answered a phone call. After hanging up, her face darkened. Where are we going? The driver asked. Eden said reluctantly, to the Armstrong family's house. Then she turned back and gave me a fierce glare. Don't think that just because Mr. Bradley is letting you go back, you have a chance. You're already divorced. It's just that Mr. Bradley is kind-hearted and feels sorry for you having nowhere to go. I hugged my luggage and nodded hurriedly, replying, I understand. Eden stared at me quietly for a while, seemingly considering the credibility of my words. In fact, she didn't need to worry, because I would never be her match, neither in the past nor in the future. When I first realized this, I was really upset and did a lot of foolish things. People are all strange. The more Bradley didn't like me, the more I liked him. Later, I gradually realized that what isn't yours will never be yours. During the years I spent in prison, I finally understood everything about love. If I had realized earlier that a forced love is not sweet, I wouldn't have ended up in such a situation. The scenery outside the window became more and more familiar as the car drove. The scenery that I used to be tired of seeing now seemed to be something I couldn't get enough of. The car slowly stopped in front of the villa. On the day I left, the roses were in full bloom. When I came back, it was another beautiful spring, but the flowers in the villa had mostly withered. Most of the old servants in the villa had left, and there were many new faces. When they saw me, their eyes were full of curiosity. Only Nanny Alice, who had taken care of me since I was a child, stood behind the others. When she saw me, her eyes immediately welled up with tears. But now, both she and I were living under someone else's roof, so we could only exchange glances and wait for a chance to catch up later. Eden got out of the car first. The butler of the villa greeted her enthusiastically. Miss Eden is here. Then he saw me behind her and asked tentatively, who is this? Eden glanced at me sideways and said casually, an unimportant person. The butler understood and looked at me with a bit more contempt. His hand that was originally reaching out to take my luggage stopped in mid-air. Eden seemed to be very busy, answering one phone call after another. After stabbing at me with some sarcastic remarks, she left. I held my suitcase and followed the butler with my head down, looking like a child who had done something wrong. Sir doesn't like others entering his room. You can choose one of the remaining rooms. Bradley likes quietness and has a cleanliness obsession. He doesn't like sharing a bed with others. So I simply locked all the rooms. In desperation, Bradley had to sleep beside me. But now, I no longer have anyone to protect me, and I won't be as thoughtless and annoying as I used to be. I chose the room furthest from Bradley. The room was filled with sundries and had a lot of dust. When I was about to clean it up, Nanny Alice somehow quietly entered the room. She hugged me tightly. I felt her warm breath, and my nose became sour, but my eyes were dry and uncomfortable. It seemed that I couldn't cry anymore. I used to be a well-known crybaby. The saying, the crying child gets the candy, applied to me. As long as I cried, even if I wanted the moon in the sky, my sister would find a way to get it for me. During the years in prison, I stopped crying because crying was useless and would only make those who bullied me find it amusing. So I never cried again. She looked me up and down, as if she couldn't get enough of looking at me. You've gotten thinner and darker. In fact, I've done all kinds of work these years. But she stubbornly refused to let me do anything and busied herself with everything inside and out. By the time we finished cleaning, it was already dark. After a long while, she hesitated and said, Eden and Sir have been very close these years. They all say that Eden. She probably was afraid of hurting my feelings, so she didn't continue. I knew what she meant but didn't say. She hoped that I would give up my delusions about Bradley and live a good life. I understand. I won't think about it anymore in the future. I was young then, just like a child. I had to get the things I liked. In the first 20 years of my smooth life, Bradley was the only one who didn't let me have my way. Maybe, as many people say, everyone can accurately find their own retribution in the crowd. At that time, Bradley's family was very poor. His white shirt was washed until it turned yellow. He sat in the first row of the classroom every day, listening to the class attentively. He seldom smiled, and there was always a hint of melancholy in his expression. So I lost my appetite and couldn't sleep well because of him. My sister felt sorry for me, and it happened that Bradley's mother was ill and needed money. First, she gave Eden a better platform. Between a broken first love and a bright future, Eden chose the future. Although they used the best medicine to keep her alive, Bradley's mother still didn't survive until New Year's Eve that year. After that, my sister invested 30 million yuan in Bradley's company and exchanged it for his engagement with me. At that time, I didn't know anything. I was so innocent and stupid that I really thought Bradley finally liked me and happily stepped into marriage. My sister planned everything for my future. As long as she was alive and held those stocks in her hands, Bradley had to love and protect me for a lifetime. But in the end, she couldn't protect me for a lifetime. The light from the corridor shone into the room. I buried my face in the old cotton pillow in the storage room. In a drowsy state, I dreamed of the day Antonio died again. Antonio was my puppy. My mother gave him to me when I was 3 years old. When I was 7 years old, someone kidnapped me, and he risked his life to save me, losing a leg in the process. Since then, rather than being a pet, he was more like a member of our family. That day, Antonio was ill, and I took him to the company to find Bradley in a hurry. Bradley was having a meeting, and Eden wouldn't let me in no matter what. She looked at me with a smile in her eyes, but her nails mercilessly pinched my dying puppy. Where did this little wretch come from? Is it even worth Mr. Bradley's personal attention? No matter how much I begged, and even when I finally knelt on the ground, that black solid wood door didn't open. So I held my puppy and gradually felt his body temperature getting colder in my arms. My puppy was so good. He didn't even make a sound at the last moment. He just looked up at me deeply and then slowly closed his eyes. Eden looked down at me with a mocking tone. The greatest misfortune in its life was having a master like you. I can't remember clearly what happened next. I only know that there was a knife on the dining table that was very dazzling. As if driven by some mysterious force, I picked up that knife. Blood slowly flowed out, and all I could see was red. I woke up from the dream covered in sweat. There were footsteps outside the door. Bang! The loud noise of the door hitting the lime wall made me instinctively curl up into a ball, because that's the sound the confinement room in prison made when it closed. Then the light gradually disappeared until the darkness swallowed you up bit by bit. When I opened my eyes tremblingly, I saw Bradley standing at the door against the light. The black suit jacket was casually draped over his arm. He looked cold and aloof, looking down at me. I used to be crazy about his cold demeanor. He had never come to see me all these years, and I almost didn't recognize him when we met again. The man's thin lips parted slightly, and his voice was like a blade soaked in ice water. Why are you sleeping here? I was taken aback for a moment. I was afraid that there were some valuable items in this room and that people weren't allowed to live here. I was worried that I would implicate Nanny Alice later. So I quickly got up, apologized, and started making the bed at the same time. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I'll go and share a room with Nanny Alice for the night. The air suddenly froze. Bradley's face turned very ugly. He strode to the front of the bed, and the smell of pine wood mixed with the smell of alcohol rushed towards me. He clamped my chin and forced me to look up. His fingertips heavily rubbed over the still unfaded scratch on my right cheek made by the branch. He sneered, Angela, who are you pretending to be so subservient for? Do you think I'll feel sorry for you like this? I stood under the dim light with my head down, looking a bit at a loss. Bradley was finally angered by me and left, slamming the door so loudly that it shook the whole room. Do as you please. It's easy to change one's appearance but hard to change one's nature. Let's see how long you can keep up this act. Everything that happened last night was like a dream. I woke up before dawn the next day. I packed my luggage and put it in the corner. Although this place held many beautiful memories for me, it was no longer my home after all. Bradley and I were already divorced. It wasn't right for me to keep relying on someone else's home. On the morning of late autumn, the sky in the south was damp and cold. I walked alone along the path to the tea garden on the back hill. My sister, my father, and my puppy were all laid to rest here, and I would also lie here in the future. In my backpack were the gold ingots I had saved over the years. The materials were exchanged with the points I earned in prison. In my spare time, I would fold ingots. It was like a kind of sustenance. During the years in prison, I survived relying on these thoughts. The photo of my sister on the tombstone was still heroic. Even in black and white, it couldn't hide her imposing manner. My sister was 10 years older than me. My mother passed away early, and to me, she was like a mother. Unlike me, she was competitive in everything. She had a double degree in law and economics. After graduation, she took over the company, and under her leadership, the company thrived. It seemed that as long as you called out, "Sister," when the sky was falling, she could solve the problem for you. Once I thought I could always live under my sister's protection and be an innocent little good-for-nothing. Until one day, the towering tree fell, and life showed its fangs to me for the first time. After my sister died, my father was so devastated that he suffered a stroke. The huge Shin family became a coveted prize in the eyes of everyone, and I was a useless young lady who held this coveted prize but had no ability to protect myself. It turned out that all the ease in life had already been priced secretly. During the years in prison, I couldn't help but think that if only I hadn't been so playful in the past. If I had listened to my father and studied for a business degree and gone to the company to assist my sister, would she have been a little more relaxed? Would she not have fainted on the ground after staying up for 2 whole nights and never woken up again? Would all the things that happened later not have happened? But the cruel thing about life is that there are never any what-ifs. In life, the sun hadn't risen yet. In the dim light, the flames burned quietly. I don't know if anyone has burned paper for you these years. Do you have enough money to spend? Sister, you're a person who pays attention to details. You always want to use the best of everything, even underground. You're probably still the most beautiful one. Antonio, if there's a good opportunity, find a good reincarnation and don't find a useless master like me again. When the last ingot turned to ashes, the sun finally rose. When I returned to the villa, Bradley had already gotten up. There were 2 servings of breakfast on the table. I didn't know if they were prepared for me. I stood aside, not daring to move. Bradley had a cold expression. What? Does Miss Angela need me to invite her to eat? I quickly sat down and silently ate the food on the plate. Bradley's parents were both teachers, and the family education was very strict. They followed the principle of no talking during meals and no talking during sleep. In contrast, I was brought up in a more free way and didn't have so many rules. In the past, when we had meals, I would always chatter non-stop. Not only did I talk by myself, but I also insisted that Bradley respond to me. Later, this rule became just a formality, but now that I was living in someone else's house, I had to follow their rules. The breakfast was tasteless. After eating, I instinctively opened my mouth. I found, as soon as I started speaking, Bradley hadn't, I knew it, expression and smiled. Why pretend to be a well-behaved young lady with good manners? Just say what you want to say. I thought for a moment and then said, I've found a job. It provides food and accommodation, and the salary is enough for me to live on. Thank you for taking me in, but it's not good for me to keep relying on you. If it's convenient, could you ask the driver to give me a ride? The villa is too far away, and I can't get a taxi. Bradley's face suddenly turned very ugly. He put the fork down heavily on the plate. You're a criminal who just got out of prison. Who would want you? Don't be sold by others and still count the money for them. I didn't know why he was so angry. I said cautiously, it's a big sister I met in prison. She told me to contact her after I got out of prison. Bradley seemed even angrier, like he had eaten a firecracker. How could you meet any good people in prison? I tried to explain that Emily was really a very nice person, but he got angrier and suddenly stood up. The chair made a harsh scraping sound on the ground. He looked down at me and sneered. Do as you please. I want to see how long you A delicate young lady can keep up this coy act. Don't come crying and begging me to take you back in a few days. I should have known better than to make arrangements in advance. I should have let you suffer more in prison. Otherwise, you wouldn't still be so naive now. It's not a long way from the mountain to the foot of the mountain. If you can't even bear this bit of hardship, how can you expect to be independent? Make arrangements in advance. So this is the reason why I was always targeted in prison. I don't know what went wrong in the middle, but what's past is past. Bringing up old matters is too tiring and exhausting. When Bradley saw that I didn't say anything, he got angry with me again. After I got out of prison, he seems to get angry more easily. Soon, the sound of a car starting came from outside. Bradley left for the company in a huff. The driver, Duke, said he would give me a ride, but I didn't want him to take the blame. So I carried my bag and walked down the mountain by myself. I only had one backpack when I came, and I still only took one backpack when I left. It's only about a 2-hour journey. I might as well think of it as a hiking exercise. You see, there's nothing in this world that can't change. The delicate young lady who used to get tired after walking a few steps can now hike several kilometers without changing her expression or breathing heavily. The earth is beneath my feet, and the sun is above my head. A person with nothing has nothing to fear. The useless young lady has no one to rely on anymore. So she has to be her own backer. I have a criminal record, and many work units are afraid to hire me. Thanks to Emily, I at least have a place to make a living. When we met, we tacitly avoided talking about what happened in prison. After a long time, Emily asked me, "Do you hate me?" I didn't say anything. It would be a lie to say I don't hate her, but I can't really bring myself to hate her either. It's just that at that time, we were both people who couldn't protect ourselves. And the saying, "Look out for number one," applies. Days went by like this. It couldn't be called prosperous, but at least it was a life with its own rhythm of warmth and cold. I live in an urban village. There are small alleys that lead in all directions, and the room never sees the sun all day long. But I'm already very satisfied to have my own independent space. There are very few things in the room, except for the daily necessities. There is hardly anything superfluous. Emily once came to my place and said jokingly, "It looks like you're ready to run away at any moment. I have to keep an eye on you." I just smiled without saying anything. When I lowered my eyes, there was nothing but regret in them. After my father and sister passed away, I started to go on crazy shopping sprees. It's hard to say why. Maybe my heart was too empty, and I needed material things to satisfy myself. In the end, almost every corner of the house was piled up with the packages I bought. It had reached a pathological level. After seeing a psychologist, Bradley forcefully restricted my monthly spending limit. After spending that amount of money, I could only stay in the villa. Besides basic food and drinks, I couldn't do anything else. That month, I was obsessed with crystals and quickly spent all my quota. And Antonio happened to get sick at that time. I didn't have the money to take him directly to the pet hospital, and Bradley had a meeting that day, and I couldn't get through to him on the phone. So, like a domino effect, everything that happened later took place. I often think that if I could have saved some money that month, would Antonio have been okay? Unfortunately, as I often say, what the world lacks the most is what ifs. During the time I worked for Emily, my days were very fulfilling. When my life is filled with things to do, I have less time to think wildly. The only strange thing is that I keep seeing Bradley from time to time. Sometimes on the way home from work. Sometimes when I'm eating at a small stall on the street corner. That black Maybach is just parked quietly by the roadside. The car windows are black, and I can't see inside, but I know he's watching me. I think he really does hate me. So much so that he needs to spy on my miserable life to add some comfort to his own. But I don't have the time to care what he thinks because I'm really busy. Flowers are a product of the seasons, and time waits for no one. After a day of hard work in the flower shed every day, I'm so tired that I fall asleep as soon as I get home. It has actually cured the insomnia I had during my years in prison. But I still dream about the things in prison. I dream of that narrow and dark confinement room without a single ray of light, and the sneers of those looking down on me. When I wake up, I find myself covered in cold sweat. One night, it rained heavily. By the time I got home, it was already very late. When I got home soaking wet, there was a puppy curled up at the door, also soaked to the skin. It was a small yellow local dog with a notch in its ear. It was shivering from the cold and let out some weak moans when it saw me. Actually, my reason told me that I shouldn't keep it because I can barely support myself now, and I don't have enough time to accompany it. But I still kept it because it was as pitiful as I was at the beginning, curled up in the corner with nowhere to go. Everything happened so suddenly at the beginning. In almost an instant, I went from a little princess doted on by everyone to a helpless wretch. Bradley was extremely busy during that time. He always left home very early and came back very late. At that time, Eden had just returned from abroad and joined the group. There were rumors throughout the company that I was about to be kicked out. I didn't want to blame Bradley for anything. After all, this marriage was something I forced. Given the situation of my family, he didn't kick me when I was down. He could already be considered kind and righteous. How could I blame him for not giving me enough care? At that time, I liked to hide in the dark wardrobe the most. The darkness and narrowness gave me the greatest sense of security. Curled up in that small corner, I was just like this little dog. I picked up the puppy, as if I was picking up myself from many years ago. It was like a gift from God to accompany me on many nights when I woke up from a nightmare. Feeling its body temperature, my heart would suddenly calm down. The puppy is very obedient and affectionate. No matter what I'm doing, it always likes to squat at my feet. The days don't seem so lonely anymore. This month, the flower shed received a big order, and the profit was very good. Emily gave us all a raise. The scale of the flower shed has been expanded, and everything is moving forward. But for some reason, I always feel a vague sense of unease in my heart. After getting out of prison, I seem to have changed. I always start to be afraid when everything is going well. May is the season of peonies. The price of peonies is very good this year, and the people in the flower shed have been busy for several days. After the peonies were all picked, we found that there was a trap in the contract. According to the contract, not only would we not get the final payment, but we would also face huge compensation. In fact, there were signs of this when Eden appeared in the flower shed for no apparent reason that day. Obviously, she was just targeting me, but for everyone in the flower shed, this was more like an unwarranted disaster. I couldn't let everyone's livelihood for a year be ruined. So I went to see Eden. When I entered the restaurant, the security guard stopped me and asked me to show my reservation. People always judge others by their appearance first. The world has always been like this. Eden was sitting on the sofa not far away, wearing a white dress, looking at my embarrassment with a half smile. After a long time, she let out a soft laugh and beckoned to me as if she were bestowing a favor. She didn't say anything, just looked down at me with a superior air. When you're begging for something, you should have the right attitude. Do you still think you're the young lady of the Carlton family? I picked up the wine on the table and bowed to Eden. The flower shed is just a small business. Please be merciful and let it go. I drank the wine in one gulp, and my stomach burned with pain. Eden curled the corners of her lips. You have a good capacity for alcohol. Then she smiled and filled my glass with wine. The wine glass made a clear sound as it was placed on the marble tabletop. I tried my best to suppress the churning feeling in my stomach, and then I drank the second glass, and the third glass, until the world started to spin and I was in a daze. In my dim consciousness, I saw Eden's eyes filled with hatred. Do you know why your dog got sick? Because I put something in its food. It was a medicine that would make the dog's intestines burst. It must have died in great pain. Remember, it was you who killed it. For a moment, I couldn't even understand what she was saying. When a huge shock comes, people always seem to instinctively avoid it. The painful whines of Antonio before he died rang in my ears again. I wanted to speak, but I found that my throat was so dry and hoarse that I couldn't even make a sound. She killed Antonio, and she should pay with her life. For a moment, my mind was controlled by such a terrifying thought. Eden leaned back on the black sofa, the corners of her mouth curling into a vicious smile. The light in the KTV shrouded everything in a bizarre glow. Like a dream, everything was just like that day. The fruit knife on the table glinted with a cold light. Stab her, and it will all be over. Anyway, there's nothing left in this world worth lingering for. Stab her, and all the pain will end. My hand was already on that knife, and Eden smiled at me as if to encourage me. I stumbled forward a step, and suddenly I heard the barking of a dog. It wasn't Antonio's voice. It was White's barking. So I'm not completely useless. At least I still have White, who depends on me completely. My mind suddenly cleared. Eden was deliberately provoking me. I almost fell for the same trick twice. I'm so stupid. I put the knife on the table. In her extremely shocked eyes, I grabbed her hair fiercely. I've been fighting for so many years, and it wasn't for nothing. I'm like a mad dog. Not someone like Eden, who was a straight-A student since childhood, can compare to. A group of people couldn't even hold me back. I've always followed the principle of not hitting someone in the face when fighting. But I broke that rule today because of Eden. When I was finally pulled away, Eden's face was covered with bloody scratches, and I had pulled out a handful of her hair. I wiped the blood from the corner of my mouth. When I was about to rush up again with my teeth bared and claws out, someone grabbed my shoulders forcefully and turned me around. Bradley's deep eyes stared at me coldly, and he let out a sneer. After all those years in prison, you still haven't learned your lesson, Miss Angela. You're not pretending anymore. You're showing your true colors. Or do you want to go back to prison? He looked so fierce that for a moment, it reminded me of 3 years ago. He was the one who pronounced my sentence like this. No matter how much I cried and begged him not to send me to prison, he just looked at me expressionlessly and then told me, those who make mistakes should be punished. After the anger in my heart subsided, I only then realized that I was a little scared. Eden is the apple of his eye. With his influence, I'm really afraid that he will lock me up again. I can be flexible. I simply bowed to him. I'm sorry. I apologized. But Bradley was stunned and even seemed a little at a loss. He instinctively wanted to help me up. But suddenly Eden's sobbing came from behind him. His voice turned cold. What's the use of apologizing to me? Apologize to Miss Eden. I didn't move. So he said it again. I still didn't move. Just stared straight at him. That day ended in a bad mood. I didn't manage to accomplish any of the things I wanted to do. The useless young lady is still a useless young lady. Emily's flower shed is on the verge of closing down. And it's all because of me. I caused this trouble. And in the end, I have to solve it myself. So I went to the house. The butler of the villa didn't dare to let me in. And Auntie Alice didn't know when Bradley would be back. So I just squatted by the flower bed at the gate, waiting for Bradley to come back. In April, the sky was overcast, and it rained after a while. Auntie Alice quietly brought me an umbrella. I took it but didn't open it. I'm here to beg for help today. So the more pitiful I look, the better. It's not completely warm in April yet, and there's a bit of a chill. When it rains, it makes people shiver with cold. I kept waiting and waiting. I waited until night, but Bradley still didn't come back. When I stood up, maybe the blood didn't rush up in time. So the world spun around, and my body swayed. Suddenly someone supported me. It was a familiar face. I stared at him for a long time. Finally, I recognized him. It was Marcus. Speaking of which, Marcus should be considered my childhood sweetheart. When we were young, he used to follow me around like a little tail. When I fought with others, he kept watch for me. When I wanted to play with fire, he handed me matches. We were both naughty. When we were together, our naughtiness multiplied exponentially. For a while, our parents prohibited us from hanging out together. Later, his family moved, and we rarely kept in touch. I originally wanted to greet him, but my hand was raised halfway when my body fell forward stiffly. After that, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was already in the hospital with an 4 drip. Marcus helped me find an event planning job for a scenic area, which required a large amount of flowers, thus resolving the crisis of the flower shed. After that day, Marcus became like he was when we were kids, a little tail following behind me. He didn't want to be a rich second generation in an easy life. Instead, he followed me around every day, moving flower pots, not caring at all that the mud stained his custom-made shirt, which was more expensive than my life. When I looked at him, he would show me a big smile with his white teeth, making my nerves twitch. I originally thought he couldn't bear such hardship, but I didn't expect him to really stick with it. He helped me do all the physical work and also negotiated cooperation for the flower shed outside. As a result, the flowers in the flower shed have been booked until next year. He even rented the house next to mine because he was worried about my accommodation safety. Everyone knew that he liked me. Even Helen would tease me from time to time. Everyone advised me, saying that it's not easy to meet someone sincere. I'm still young and should find someone. That day, I cooked a big table of food myself and only invited Marcus. I also bought a bottle of red wine. Although it wasn't expensive, the atmosphere was just right. Marcus looked at me with a smile in his eyes. When his peach blossom eyes looked at you, there was always a feeling of unwavering affection. Is there anything good happening, Angela? I poured a glass of wine for him and then a glass for myself, and then drank it up in one gulp. Mr. Marcus has wasted so much time on me. Let's talk about any business we have today. Marcus stopped smiling and then forced a smile. Angela, we do have some feelings from our childhood. I now believe in a set of rules. When anyone approaches me, it means they want something from me. If he really had such deep and long-lasting feelings. When my family went bankrupt and I was sent to prison, he never came to see me. What childhood sweetheart. I only believe that interests come first. I smiled and slowly poured myself another glass of wine. Marcus, when it comes to business, there's no fun to bring up feelings. I stood up and took a step closer to him. Tell me, what do you want? Marcus's expression gradually became serious. He clinked his wine glass against mine, and there was a hint of playfulness in his eyes. You're different from before. I heard that the Carlton family has some precious spice formulas passed down from their ancestors, as well as methods to make the fragrance last longer. The Carlton family started their business with perfume. In recent years, due to fierce competition from foreign perfumes, they gave up this business. When the Hedwig Group fell apart, only a few perfume formulas were left to me. I looked up at him steadily. Then it depends on Mr. Hedwig's sincerity. I put forward my requirements. Full control of the company's operation and more than 64% of the shares. His peach blossom eyes completely lost their smile at this moment, and he crossed his hands on the table. I can stay out of the operation. But isn't 36% too little? I smiled. What's the use of pretending to have deep and unending feelings? It would have been easier for everyone if we had been like this from the start. I'm not short of people who want to invest in me, and I'm the only one with this technology. I've long heard that you made bold statements at the shareholders' meeting, and the perfume line has already started to be set up. You've invested so much money in it. Now that the Carlton family is facing a change of leadership, you can't afford to lose. Marcus's face turned a bit ugly. He had already lost this negotiation. My sister always wanted to do the perfume business when she was alive and pick up the family tradition passed down from our ancestors. But the competition in the perfume industry was too fierce, so it was postponed again and again. The reason why I worked in Emily's flower shed was that the flower shed could provide enough raw materials, and I also had the intention of testing the formulas. Even without Marcus, I would have found other investors. In the following days, I almost stayed in Marcus's laboratory all the time, experimenting with the proportions of various flower materials with everyone. I would arrive at the laboratory before dawn, and by the time I got back, it was already pitch dark. I was eager to do this well and prove that I wasn't that useless. A formula often requires hundreds or even thousands of attempts to be restored. Immersed in the flower materials every day, for a few days, I felt like I couldn't smell anything. I entrusted White to Emily. Every day when I got off work, it would wait for me at the intersection to go home together. So when I didn't see that familiar figure at the intersection that day, my heart panicked. I searched everywhere around. Emily and the people from the flower shed helped me look for it until midnight. But we didn't hear any sign of White. The surveillance showed that Bradley had been here once. Without hesitation, I stopped a taxi and rushed to the Armstrong family's house. On the way, the last image of Antonio kept flashing back and forth in my mind. I was afraid that Bradley took my puppy away to vent Eden's anger. When I got out of the taxi, I could barely stand because I was so scared. Scared that all I would find was White's body. For some reason, the door of the Armstrong family's house was open today. The doorman tried to stop me, but I had already rushed into the villa. Eden was also there, and my heart sank. Bradley looked at me with a serious expression and said in a deep voice, "Everyone else, go out." The security guards closed the door of the villa, and it was very quiet inside. The wound on her face hadn't healed yet. When she saw me, she gave a resentful smile. I rushed towards her, and she stepped back in a hurry and fell to the ground. "Where's my puppy? Tell me, what did you do to it?" I knew I must look terrible at that moment, and the people around didn't even dare to stop me. The confusion on Eden's face didn't seem to be fake. I looked at Bradley again. He frowned and scolded. What's this young lady's temper again? He used to say this to me all the time. I once thought that if I changed, he would like me, but now I know how much he hates me. Just thinking that he might take his hatred for me out on my puppy makes me shiver. I suddenly thought that maybe if I was miserable enough, I could make him feel a little better. So I took off my coat, revealing the dense scars on my body. Look, I've really learned my lesson. I'm sorry. I separated you two before, but I've already paid the price for my frivolous love when I was young. I know I was wrong. Please give White back to me. It doesn't know anything. I didn't want to cry, but just thinking of White, my tears fell. Bradley didn't say anything for a long time. He just looked at me quietly. He raised his hand as if to touch my wound, but then put it down. His voice was hoarse. I don't know. I cried like a child, as if I was shedding all the tears I had held back for all these years at once. I have nothing left. I just want my puppy. My puppy. I grabbed his shirt, and Bradley seemed a bit at a loss. When I cried to the end, I almost couldn't control myself and started to retch. My eyes went dark for a while. All the fatigue of these days seemed to hit me at this moment, and I could barely stand. In a daze, suddenly the barking of a puppy came from behind me. I turned around in disbelief. Marcus was standing outside the door, holding the puppy. The street lamp in the courtyard cast a dim yellow light on the puppy's white fur, and my flustered heart suddenly calmed down. The puppy couldn't wait to jump into my arms and rubbed against my face affectionately. Marcus put my coat on me. Bradley looked at me as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say a word. Holding the precious puppy that I had lost and found again, I felt a lingering fear in my heart. Marcus said that White fell into a ditch on the way to the intersection to wait for me. It was too dark, and the road was too noisy, so no one saw it. After that day, Bradley's car would still appear on my way home from time to time. Many times, he seemed to want to say something to me, but in the end, he didn't say anything, and I was busy with the launch of the first product, spinning around like a top every day. The day the first product was launched was the anniversary of my sister's death. That night, I went to the graveyard alone to pay respects to my sister and father. Sitting in front of the graves, I talked to them a lot. From now on, they'll have to call me Miss Hedwig, just like they used to call you. I've grown up and can take care of myself. Don't worry. Go and be reincarnated soon. Don't just look at me worriedly in my dreams. I'll be fine on my own in the future. When I turned to leave, a butterfly landed on my t-shirt. I smiled and then cried. The first product was a great success when it was launched, and the brand's popularity was successfully established. The useless young lady could finally take on responsibilities on her own and keep moving forward with my sister's last wish. It was spring again. I met Bradley at a business gala. In just 1 year, he seemed to have aged a lot. Although he was only in his early 30s, there were already some gray hairs on his temples. There was a time when I had the illusion that he was gradually falling in love with me. For example, sometimes when I came home late, the light in the living room was always on. He would sit under the lamp and only go back to his room to rest when he saw me come back. I always liked to tinker with new things and make the house lively. He liked quietness but never stopped me. He just watched me make a fuss. Sometimes when I kissed him, he would lose control for a moment. I thought that one day he would fall in love with me. The useless young lady who had been protected so well always thought that everyone in the world would like her. It wasn't until he sent me to prison without hesitation that I finally realized that some love can't be forced. I don't hate Bradley. For someone he didn't like, he had already done his best. So I naturally smiled at him and greeted him. For some reason, he seemed a bit stiff and stood there, hesitating. Eden has been sent to prison. I knew about this. I collected the evidence of her embezzling public funds and framing her subordinates. But she was sentenced more severely than I expected. So I just nodded to indicate that I knew. I went to see her once, in the gray prison. She looked numb. Thus, evil has its own reward, and all the hatred has come to an end. And I don't want to be immersed in hatred anymore. Emily was right. I can't be trapped in the past forever. Bradley's lips moved a few more times, but he only said, "Congratulations." I smiled and nodded slightly, then turned and left. It was getting dark, and there were some raindrops in the sky. When I left, Bradley hadn't left yet. He just stood there straight at the door, letting the raindrops wet his whole body. Bradley's perspective. In fact, Bradley used to really dislike Angela. a young lady who grew up in a honeypot, with a smile that never had a hint of darkness. She was really annoying. How could someone's love be so overflowing? In fact, Bradley and Eden were the same kind of people, seizing every opportunity to climb up. So when Eden chose to go abroad without hesitation, he wasn't surprised at all and didn't hold any grudges. Later, he married Angela. It's hard to say whether it was really out of necessity or because the plant in the dark couldn't live without the sun once it was illuminated by the sunlight. Bradley's father died early, and his mother was sick all year round. He grew up wandering among his uncle's houses, relying on the kindness of others. He hid in the corner, like a dark mouse, watching their favoritism towards their own children. This kind of favoritism was understandable, but it always made him feel a dull pain in his heart when he saw it. He had never received unconditional love from others. Only Angela gave it to him. This kind of love was too intense. So intense that it almost burned people. So he just kept backing away. But his eyes always involuntarily lingered on Angela. He hated the feeling of losing control. So he used indifference as a mask. Later, something happened to Angela's family. The Angela who always had a smile on her face before stopped smiling. She seemed like a different person, always looking at him timidly. During that time, he was extremely busy. So busy that he didn't even have time to pay attention to her emotions. In fact, it was just an excuse he made for himself. With such a big accident happening, even a fool would know that she would be sad. Everyone knew that she needed care, but he took it for granted and ignored her. Because a person like him, who had never received love, couldn't give love either. He was like a dark vessel, constantly absorbing love but unable to give it out. Angela was ill. At that time, she must have been very sick. So she picked up that knife under the stimulation. He sent her to prison with his own hands because of his life principle. Those who make mistakes should be punished. Just like when he was a child. He hadn't visited Angela in those 3 years because he was afraid that he would soften his heart. It was only later when he saw the scars all over her body that he finally realized how terribly wrong he had been. Later, Angela got married. Her husband had a gentle personality and it was obvious that he was a child who grew up being loved. In the photos, they both had equally bright smiles. After that, they had a very lovely daughter who looked a lot like Angela. When she smiled, she had 2 small dimples. Sometimes Bradley would drive to their house. Sometimes he would see her figure through the dim light. He watched all of this almost greedily, and only after a long time would he drive away. Later, he was always alone. One night, he saw a figure that looked very much like Angela. When he chased after her, she suddenly jumped into the river. He desperately pushed her onto the shore, but he himself gradually sank down due to exhaustion. Before losing consciousness, he seemed to see that young girl standing in the sunlight again, smiling brightly and telling him, "Hello, my name is Angela." The end.